People love to say, it's time to move on, be strong, get over it. But if you've ever lost someone or lived through a heartbreak, you know it doesn't work that way. Grief doesn't have a timeline, heartbreak doesn't come with a reset button, and moving on isn't even the point. The point is learning how to live again. And that's what we're talking about on this episode of Purpose, Not Pity. You're listening to Purpose, Not Pity, a space for stories that hurt, heal, and remind you that you're not alone. I'm Erika Hernandez, storyteller, bonus mom, grieving mother, healing human. This isn't a podcast about having it all figured out. It's about showing up in the middle of the mess, rebuilding piece by piece, and choosing purpose, not pity. Whether you're deep in your own grief, trying to find your voice again, or just searching for a little light in the dark, this space is for you. Let's talk about it, all of it. Before Jovan passed away, I can't tell you how many times I heard it. You need to move on. Get over it. Forgive. Stop being so angry. And let me tell you, those words fucking sucked. And the reason why they sucked was because most of the time, they weren't said with love. They were said with judgment. Forgive and you won't be so bitter. Or if you just let it go, you'd finally be happy. But here's the thing. Maybe they really weren't talking to me. Maybe they were talking to themselves. Maybe they were the ones carrying the guilt for the pain they caused me. And instead of facing it, they just projected it back onto me. And that's the thing about forgiveness. People love to demand it from the person who's hurting, but they rarely demand it from the person who caused the pain. Did I need to forgive? Maybe, but never as much as they needed to forgive themselves. And that is the part nobody ever admits out loud. Now fast forward to after Jovan's passing. Until this day, no one has yet told me to move on. Well, at least not in those words. Instead, it turned into, stop talking about him so much. Don't drag the sadness. Don't get too close to his friends. You're not letting Jovan rest in peace. And those words, they cut even deeper. Because now, it wasn't just about me. It was about my son. It was people telling me there was a limit on how much I could love my son out loud. There was a limit on how much space he was allowed to still have and take in my life. And unfortunately, to those people, grief doesn't expire. Love doesn't expire. And talking about my son, keeping him alive in stories and memories, that's not disrupting his rest or his peace. That's honoring his existence. So whether it was before or after Jovan, the message was the same. Be less, feel less, speak less. Don't make us uncomfortable. And maybe you've been there too. Maybe someone told you to stop talking about your divorce. Stop bringing up the job you lost. Stop grieving the dream that never happened. And maybe it made you wonder, am I too much? Am I wrong for still feeling this way? Nope, you're not wrong. You're human. And if your grief or heartbreak makes someone else uncomfortable, that's their problem to work through, not yours. Here's the part I feel like people don't talk about enough. It's not just the anniversaries and the big dates that break us. It's the daily life, the first normals. For me, one of the hardest was the car. That was Jovan and I's place. We laughed there, argued there, had real conversations there, and suddenly I couldn't get behind the wheel. I avoided driving at all costs. I thank God every day I had bonus children with driver's license and cars. I signed up for every delivery service you can think of: Uber, DoorDash, Instacart, Walmart. If it meant I didn't have to drive, I was in. And the truth is, it wasn't just about the car, it was about the silence. It was about the emptiness of the seat next to me. The way a simple drive can turn into reliving the loss all over again. Eventually, my son Naziel started riding with me because he knew what it did to me. And although it helped, it wasn't the same. Work was another one. When I finally got a job 4 months after Jovan passed, I wasn't ready. I took the job under doctor's orders. My therapist said it would be the best way for me to slowly start integrating myself back into society. I accepted less pay, less title, just to try. But every morning I cried on my way to work. And not just a tear or two, I mean ugly, snotty crying. And I would purposely get to work 15 minutes earlier so that I can sit in my car and have enough time to wipe my face, practice my smile, and practice how to sound normal. And you know what's wild? People think grief looks like tears at a funeral or anniversaries. But grief looks like answering a coworker's small talk when they casually ask, "So, how many kids do you have?" Grief looks like biting your tongue in that moment and praying that you don't fall apart. And then there are the little things: cooking, laundry, grocery shopping. Every chore had a shadow attached. Setting one less plate for dinner, washing one less pair of socks, walking down the aisles in Publix and skipping things because the person who wanted them isn't here anymore. That's the part no one prepares you for. You think grief will live in anniversaries, the holidays, the birthdays, and yes, it does. But grief also lives in the cereal aisle, in the sound of a song on shuffle, in folding a hoodie that still smells like them. And if you're listening right now, you might be nodding because you know exactly what I mean. Maybe for you, it wasn't death. Maybe it was divorce. And suddenly the bed feels too big. Or a friendship ending and suddenly scrolling through your phone, realizing you don't have that person to text anymore. Or a job you loved and suddenly Monday mornings feel empty. Grief doesn't just break your heart once, it follows you into your routines. It shows up when you least expect it. And that's what makes rebuilding so damn exhausting. Let's talk about the turning point because we've all had them. And if you haven't, you will. For me, before Jovan passed, I was already living in survival mode. Wake up, hustle, go to bed. That was my rhythm. 1, 2, 3, repeat. 1, 2, 3, repeat. And honestly, that was how I avoided dealing with my shit. I drowned myself in work. I cleaned and organized like it was an Olympic sport. My kids hated how obsessed I was with cleaning. But what they didn't realize was that it wasn't about a spotless house. It was about control. Because when everything inside me felt messy, I made sure everything around me was organized. That was my therapy before therapy. But after Jovan passed, that survival mode wasn't enough anymore. I couldn't just clean my way through it. I couldn't outwork the grief. I had to face it. Therapy helped me put a language to what I was feeling. Psychiatry gave my body the support it needed when my brain and my heart couldn't carry it all. But honestly, the true turning point came when I decided to live. Not just survive, but live. And that decision didn't come from some grand, powerful moment. It came from one shift. I was scrolling through Instagram and I heard this video say, If you believe in God's promise to reunite you with your loved ones, stop counting the days since they've been gone. Start counting the days until you see them again. That line, it broke me. But it broke me in a good way. Because up until that point, every day I woke up and thought, it's been 2 weeks. It's been 4 months. It's been a year. And that counting kept me trapped in the loss. But the second I shifted my perspective from looking back at what I had lost to looking forward to what I still believe is ahead, something cracked open in me. That's when I knew I have to live, not just for me, but for him. And in the spirit of honesty and rawness, living again came with guilt. The first time I laughed in public, I thought, what will people think? The first time I smiled on social media, I worried someone would say, she must have not loved him enough if she can smile already. Which is mind-blowing to me because I was never the type of person who gave a shit about what other people felt, thought, or said about me. But society tells us grief means drowning forever. But what I learned is joy and grief can live in the same body. Joy and grief can coexist. And maybe that's what some of you need to hear. It's okay to laugh again. It's okay to smile. It's okay to love. It doesn't mean you've forgotten them. It means you're carrying them into your living. For me, part of that living came through TikTok. At first, it was my journal, my way of getting my thoughts out of my head. But over time, it became my community. People I'd never met who understood my pain better than those who've known me my entire life. And that's the beauty of grief shared. It heals you and it heals others at the same time. And then there were my bonus kids. Let me tell you, having them around saved me more than they will ever know. Because when we were together, laughter was required. And if we weren't laughing, something was off. And it was those moments that I realized joy wasn't betrayal. Joy was survival. And that's what living again really is. It's not about pretending the loss didn't happen. It's about honoring it while choosing to keep breathing, to keep moving, and to keep loving. The world keeps going whether we want it to or not. You don't have to sprint through it, but you have to move. And every time I do, I hear Jovan's voice in my head saying, Ma, go out with your friends. Take that vacation. Find love. Live. Those were the same words he used to tell me. And that's when I realized living again isn't betrayal. It's the best way I can honor Jovan. Because living is the one thing he would have wanted for me the most. Rebuilding isn't just about death. It shows up in every kind of heartbreak. I've had to rebuild after relationships I thought would last forever. You know, the kind where someone becomes part of your daily rhythm. The person you text good news to or you call when you're having a bad day. And then one day, it's gone. And it's not just the person you miss, it's the life you thought you were building with them. The conversations, the concerts, the little things. And suddenly you have to figure out how to live without your person. I've had to rebuild after losing a job I loved. During COVID, that job was taken from me overnight. And it wasn't about the paycheck. It was about identity, purpose, belonging, and the friendships that I built there. And even though I've had other jobs since, it's never felt the same. And maybe for you, it wasn't a person or a job. Maybe it was a dream, a vision you carried for years that didn't work out. Maybe it was your health, your faith, your innocence. Whatever it is, you know that hollow feeling of standing in the ashes of something that used to mean everything to you. And that's why I say, my entire life has been a cycle of breaking and rebuilding over and over and over again. And if you're listening right now, maybe you feel the same. Maybe your heart was built for both breaking and rebuilding. Because when life knocks us down, we don't just lose the person, the job, or the dream. We lose a version of ourselves too. And that's what makes rebuilding so personal. It's not about replacing what we lost, it's about reclaiming who we are. And across every story I've heard, whether it's grief, divorce, illness, betrayal, or starting over after failure, there's always one common thread: identity. It's asking questions like, who am I without them? Who am I without the job, that title, that dream? Who am I now that life doesn't look like I thought it would? And the answers don't come quick. That's why so many of us feel ashamed, because society makes it seem like we're supposed to bounce back in a few months, maybe a year. But there is no bouncing back. There's only rebuilding forward. I can't tell you how many times I've received DMs saying, "You're so strong. My person passed 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago, and I am nowhere near where you are. How do you do it?" And every time I have to remind them, you're seeing a 30-second clip of my life, not the breakdown, not the nights I cry myself to sleep, not the mornings I almost didn't make it out of bed. Healing looks different on everyone. Some rebuild fast, some slow, some never finish the house and just keep living in construction. And that's okay. So if you feel ashamed for not bouncing back, hear me. There is nothing wrong with you. You're not behind. You're not failing. You're human. And the fact that you're still here, still breathing, still trying, that's rebuilding. If I've learned anything, it's that rebuilding does not start with a big plan. It starts small. For me, it started with practicing the tools I picked up from therapy and support groups. Do they work every time? No, I wish they did. There are still days the pain takes over, but I've learned to give myself grace and to say, okay, Erika, today was a crying day. That's allowed. Tomorrow might be different. I've also learned that the pain never disappears and that we just learn to live with it. And when the feelings rise up, instead of pushing them down or pretending they're not there, I try to feel them, validate them, and then take a breath. Sometimes I have to take 10 deep breaths and then keep moving forward. Rebuilding isn't about never breaking down. It's about learning how to stand back up again and again and again. Rebuilding doesn't mean you have to know what the whole house will look like. It doesn't mean you have to have a blueprint or a deadline. It can start with just one brick, one small act of living, making a bed, cooking a meal, showing up to therapy, writing down your thoughts, taking a walk, laughing at something funny without apologizing for it. That one small act might not look like rebuilding, but piece by piece, those small things become a foundation again. So don't pressure yourself to have it all figured out. Don't compare your timeline to mine or anyone else's for that matter. Rebuilding isn't about being perfect, it's about being present. And if today all you did was breathe, cry, keep going, and listening to this episode, that's a brick. That counts. You're rebuilding whether you see it or not. Whether your heartbreak was losing a child, a marriage, a friendship, a job, or a dream, the truth is the same. The world is going to keep on going. And somehow, some way, so do we. Not perfectly, not pain-free, but step by step, breath by breath, brick by brick. And the beautiful part, you don't have to do it alone. We're in this together. This community is proof that even in our darkest chapters, we can still write new pages. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening and holding space with me today. If something in this episode spoke to you, share it with someone who might need it, or just let it sit with you. That's enough. You can follow along on TikTok and Instagram at by Erika Hernandez for more stories, updates, and little pieces of healing in real time. And remember, this journey isn't about perfection, it's about presence. I'll see you next time, and until then, keep choosing purpose over pity.